Welcome back to Russian Cars and Tank. Today we will talk about one of the most iconic Soviet tanks of the Cold War era, the T-62. This tank is an important part of Russian and Soviet military history and played a huge role during the second half of the 20th century. It was introduced in the early 1960s and replaced many of the older models like the T-55. The T-62 became a symbol of Soviet armored power and was exported to many countries around the world. It is still remembered for its durability, powerful gun, and combat service in many wars. The T-62 was developed at a time when the Soviet Union was trying to keep up with NATO forces. After World War II, tanks were becoming more powerful, and the Soviets wanted something better than the T-55. The T-62 was officially accepted into service in 1961. One of its most important features was that it was the first tank in the world to be fitted with a smoothbore gun. This was a big change in tank design. Most tanks before that had rifled guns, but the smoothbore 115mm gun of the T-62 could fire high-velocity rounds with great armor penetration, making it very effective against enemy tanks of that time. The tank weighed around 37 tons, which was heavier than the T-55 but still considered manageable for mobility. It had a crew of 4, the commander, gunner, loader, and driver. The tank was powered by a V55 12-cylinder diesel engine producing 580 horsepower. This gave the T-62 a maximum speed of about 50 km per hour on roads and slightly less off-road. The operational range was around 450 km with external fuel tanks. For the 1960s, this was quite impressive and allowed the tank to move quickly on the battlefield. One of the biggest reasons why the T-62 became famous was its gun, the 115mm U-5TS smoothbore cannon. It was capable of firing armor-piercing fin-stabilized discarding sabot rounds, known as APFSDS. These rounds could penetrate the armor of many NATO tanks of the time, including the American M48 and the British Centurion. The gun also fired high-explosive rounds, making it versatile against not just tanks but also enemy positions and fortifications. The T-62 also carried a coaxial 7.62mm PKT machine gun and a 12.7mm DSHK heavy machine gun mounted on top for anti-aircraft defense. Altogether, this gave the tank strong firepower. In terms of armor, the T-62 was built with welded steel armor. The frontal armor was up to 242mm thick in some places, giving it solid protection against many weapons of its era. However, as tank technology advanced in the 1970s and 1980s, the T-62 began to face challenges against newer NATO tanks like the American M60, the German Leopard 1, and later the Abrams. Still, in the 1960s it was one of the best protected tanks in service. The design of the T-62 followed the traditional Soviet philosophy of being simple, rugged, and easy to produce. It did not have as many advanced electronics as Western tanks, but it was easier to build in large numbers. The Soviets produced over 20,000 T-62 tanks, and many were exported to Allied nations, including countries in the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. This wide export made the T-62 one of the most recognizable tanks in the world. The T-62 first saw combat during the 1967 Six-Day War between Israel and its Arab neighbors. Egypt and Syria both used the T-62, but they were defeated by Israeli forces. However, the tank proved itself as a strong machine and continued to be used in later conflicts. In the 1973 Yom Kippur War, Syrian and Egyptian T-62s fought against Israeli tanks like the Centurion and M60 Patton. The battles were intense, and while Israel's better tactics and training gave them the advantage, the T-62 still managed to inflict damage and showed that it was a serious opponent. The T-62 was also used in the Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s.